the idea behind Bubbling Up is to have the opportunity to find out a little bit more about writers, be they script writers, audio writers, what have you, people that we find or come across in the writing community that are on their way to good things, on their way to greatness. So it gives us an opportunity, rather than speaking to those who've already made it, like TV execs or agents or something like that, kind of people who are really our contemporaries, finding out about themselves, what they get up to, what their aims and goals are, and yeah, just an opportunity for a little bit of a general chat. Once we're finished, myself and Amy will probably talk for about 3/4 an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer. And there will be the opportunity for you to ask questions as well if you wish. So by all means, pop them in the chat box. And once we're finished, we shall just throw open questions to everyone, should anyone want to ask yourselves. So, okay, there we go. Anything you want to add to that, Amy? Do you think?
No, I think that you said it extremely perfectly.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so first question really, I suppose, is obviously with Martyn being based in the UK, Steven is based US. How did the two of you meet?
Well, I wrote a book called Yesterday's Flight, which was the first book that I'd written since leaving school, which was so many years ago, and it became an Amazon bestseller. And I did it because I'd had a huge change in my personal life following the financial crash, and I suddenly found myself with a lot of time on my hands. Well, not a lot of time, but more time on my hands, and 3 young children to raise. And so I decided to take a bit of time out of the 9 to 5 and write this story that had been in my head for a while. And after it was self-published on Amazon, it became a bestseller. And I started to get some decent feedback through. And I even had interest from Winkler Films over in Hollywood. Winkler Films, who did Rocky and The Goodfellas and things like that. And I thought I should pursue this. And so I decided to go for a literary agent. But it became very clear that the book that I'd written, whilst it was having some success on Amazon, it wasn't there. It wasn't good enough. The quality of the writing wasn't good enough. And so I sold my car at the time, which was a Peugeot 607, which is why at the front of Tomorrow's Flight it says for the 607, because it was sacrificed to pay for the former editor of Stephen King, a guy called Mike.
That's a nice link.
Well, a little Easter egg for you. So he edited it. He agreed to edit it, and I sent it out, and I landed a literary agent in New York, and sent her the book, and she signed me. And I also had another book, which at the time was called When the World Ended, and I sent her that as well. And she liked that, but she said it needed a lot of editing doing. She said, I've got just the guy for you, and he lives in Los Angeles, and he's called Stephen Stiefel, and it's right up his alley, and I'll ask him if he'll do it. And Steve read it and agreed to do it and sent me notes back, and I rewrote it on the back of his edit. And in the meantime, I'd asked her to send Yesterday's Flight because we couldn't get a publishing deal with it. And Steve came back and said, well, this time, rather than being an editor, why don't we rewrite it together and do a complete rewrite on it? And I think he sent me about, what was it, Steve? 14, 15 pages, I think, of notes.
Probably I sent you a rewritten first chapter. That's usually how I do that. Yeah,
something like that. And I really liked what he came back with. I really liked the work that he'd done on When the World Ended, which eventually became the Marcia Ellis incident, which was my first traditionally published book. And in the interim period, for reasons not for here, I'd fired my literary agent, and Steve and I just decided that we would carry on with it. And I managed to land a deal for the other book, publishing deal on my own, and we continued, and that book eventually became Tomorrow's Flight. And that's basically, that was 5 years ago now. And yeah.
If I remember correctly, what we did differently to begin with was you switched point of views between characters within chapters. And so what I did was I broke it down into sub-chapters where every chapter stayed with whoever's point of view we were with for that sub-chapter. So we still have multiple point of views within a chapter, but they switch characters in a more defined way.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought with Yesterday's Flight there was a lot more to tell. There was more story there. It was the first thing I'd written, and looking back on it, it isn't very good. But you know, when Steve sent me what he thought and what we should do, I just thought, well, yeah, I mean, it just all lined up and made sense, and as Steve said, I mean, the book's double the length that it was now. I mean, I think it topped in at 52,000. Tomorrow's Flight's just over 100. So there's a lot more.
Wow.
You know, there is a lot more to it.
A lot more teeth in there. Yes,
Yeah.
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 So what about your writing background, Steve? What did you get involved in? How did you get started in it all?
I spent a lot of time in writing programs in college, teaching and writing, and eventually landed a job working in magazine publishing. And I did that for many years, and that was great because it was a steady income and it was fun. So I was getting paid to be a writer. And so I'd kind of not stopped, but after working all day writing for the magazines, I wasn't as keen to spend my evenings writing fiction or screenplays. And so I did that for a long time, and then the magazine world sort of imploded or exploded, depending on how you look at it. And then I kind of drifted back. So I started working with writers through various people, and started spending more time on my own writing. And that's about where Martyn and I came together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of your partnership, so what is your process, like your practical process, taking into account the time difference? You know, how do you actually write a book together when you're all those miles apart?
Or a script, yeah.
Or a script, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same process. Go ahead, Martyn.
Yeah. So with Flight, for instance, Steve, I would wake up to a chunk of writing because Steve would send it over at night, and you know, which is after o'clock in the morning over here. So I would wake up, start the day off, and then I would have this chunk of writing that I would go through, and then we would then talk. I would probably send an email, I think, back first, and then we would talk and we'd go through it and what we liked and what we didn't like, and this kind of thing. So it was very collaborative in that sense. I honestly don't think the time difference, which is 8 hours, generally speaking, there's a freaky time of the year when it's 7 hours, but generally it's 8 hours. I don't think that's impacted us at all, quite honestly, because
it seems to, especially since we've been doing this for some time now, we've kind of worked out a real routine.
Yeah.
Where you know, we often talk. We talk probably twice a week, around noon Los Angeles time, 8 p.m. your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll talk for an hour and a half, and go over everything. There's been a lot to talk about lately with the marketing. It's a lot less fun this phase. Yeah. I mean, what we've learned is the as much as we wanted to finish the novel, having a novel that's not finished is a lot more fun to work on than having one that is finished.
Yeah. It is, yeah. I mean, we've essentially been used car salesmen for the last 3 months and probably haven't written as much as we'd like to. And writing the book is the enjoyable. It's frustrating, but that's the enjoyable bit. Selling the book is, oh God, it's just, yeah. It's soul sucking.
Congratulations! I know it's been bestseller and things like that. So Tomorrow's Flight, so on Amazon bestseller list and things like that, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, we allowed ourselves to get a little bit chuffed and excited about that, and it hit number one the other weekend. It hit number one, which was really strange. It hit number one in France first, which was interesting because why would it? And then it hit number one in the UK, America, Germany, Canada, and I'm forgetting one, Steve, as well, at the Australia at the same time.
Wow.
So that was quite interesting. And since then, it's always dipping in and out of the bestseller status. So it's been, I don't know what you would call it now. I mean, it's technically an international number one bestseller.
And interestingly, the Amazon updates several times a day. We sell better at night and on the weekends. So I guess that has to do with the subject matter.
Yes.
And
Funny,
people
isn't
being, and
it?
probably people being drunk as well. So that's we've
Well-
discovered our target audience.
There you go.
One of the categories,
Wow.
at Amazon, you choose a few categories that your book fits into. And so we're in time travel, science fiction, and suspense.
Yeah.
And when you go into time travel, you find things that are very surprising. There is a huge amount of romance in time travel.
And we got our first, when it hit #1 as well, we got our first 1-star review or 1-star
Oh.
rating. We didn't get a review, we got a rating. And I said to Steve, I would wager that the book that's been at #1 for so long is The Midnight Library. And I said to Steve, I think it's him because we pushed him off #1.
Oh,
Oh, he's back sitting at #1 and has been for
with
weeks.
all three versions of the book. He's at 1, 2, and 3 now. So.
Yeah, he's always at 1, 2, and 3.
We pay the favour and give him a 1-star as well. So
Yeah, I mean that's not going to do a lot of damage, I don't think. At this point.
Amongst all those other ones, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the interesting thing, of course, with Tomorrow's Flight is not only is it a book, but it's also when I came across it as a script. So what challenges did you find? How did you find it different? Obviously, there's a lot of difference between writing it as a novel and writing it as a script. Did you find that particularly challenging, or was it something that allowed you to explore other areas that you perhaps hadn't been able to explore in a different medium?
Well, I did the first draft of the script while Steve was finishing something else off. And because we've been writing this now in total for probably 4.5 years, we know it so well inside and out that, quite frankly, it wasn't really that much of a challenge. There are things, of course, that you can't put in the script that are in the book. I mean, we all know that. And Tomorrow's Flight won't work as a feature. There's just no way we could condense the story into 2 hours or an hour and 40 minutes or whatever. So we've settled on a limited series of 12 episodes. So I guess like a 12-hour movie split into, 12 segments. But no, I don't think there's been any particular challenge. What it has done for me personally is that it's funny that as you start writing it, you start thinking of different things that you could put in. So in the pilot episode, for instance, they use a ground penetrating drone to find the aeroplane. Now, when we wrote the book, that technology didn't exist. Or wasn't available to civilians, let's say. So things like that are interesting to me because we can update it now as we go to make it more relevant, I guess. But I think, I mean, what's your take on that, Steve? I don't think it's been...
Well, I was a little resistant, if you remember. I wasn't excited. I was like, oh my gosh, we just finished this thing. You want to do it all over again? But once I saw the draft of the pilot that Martyn had done, I was like, oh, this is doable. I think it's sometimes, I'm not sure it's more difficult to adapt your own work, but you do have certain blind spots in going from one to the other. And we've tested the waters with that a little bit. So I think we're feeling like we have a good pilot episode behind us now. We did the table reads and
the table read was very valuable because that really highlighted where it didn't work, where the pilot episode didn't work, and we've been able to rewrite that now quite considerably. And as Steve said, we think we've got a pretty tight, workable pilot now. So, yeah.
And what's the plan for that then? Are you kind of shopping it around? Are you sending it to production companies and stuff, or are you hanging fire? What's the plan? If you don't mind me asking, and if it's not top secret.
Let Martyn handle that one. What's the plan, Martyn? Please tell me.
Hopefully to sell it and make us some money, but we're working alongside. In 2018, we got into the top 10 with Book Pipeline, with Pipeline Media, and they've been really supportive since that point. And so we're getting a lot of support from Pipeline now, and the plan, as I guess with everybody that writes a pilot, is that, you know, we're either looking for a production company to partner with us, or we're looking for a manager that can champion it, and that's the next stage that we're on. We're also, next week, I think, or the week after, we're going to start reaching out to the talent that we've got earmarked on it to see if we can get letters, you know, of commitment on it as well. So we're just doing everything we can. We're just hustling. And years ago in sales training, because as some of you know, I used to sell cars for a living, and then I sold insurance and things. And one piece of sales training that I always remember was that it's just a question of throwing as much mud at the wall as you can, because some of it will stick. And that's what we're doing. We've written it. We think it's really good. The book has proved that it's a commercial viability because of the reviews that it's getting, because of how well it's been received, because of how well it's sold. So we think we've got all the ducks in a row now, and that's what we're trying to take forward.
There's a question from Cynthia saying, also Steve's answered it actually.
I was answering as well.
Yeah, did you say that you were asked to write the script, or was there some other motivation?
No, that was just me torturing Steve some more. I just felt that we needed to have the script, and we just finished The Harvesting. We just finished the novel. We'd already kind of started on Poe, which is Steve's creation, plus our own individual stuff, and I decided that we should take something else on as well, for some strange reason.
Why not?
Well, it turns out to be a pretty smart strategy, I think. You know, Martyn did the heavy lifting at the beginning on that, but managers and producers were learning really, I don't quite understand it, but they really love the idea of having an existing product that you've adapted from for your TV or film projects. I really don't understand why that is, but it does seem to be the case. I guess, you know, in the best case, somebody can say, well, how does this end? And we can just hand them the book and say, here, this is how it goes, you know. And so, I mean, we have a proved story, you know, and they can, you know, like it or not like it, but they can see what it is.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you don't end up with the David Lynch problem of, you know, I painted myself into a corner and I don't know who the murderer is.
Yeah, or the lost problem of, you know, let's just make it purgatory and not answer any questions, you know.
Martyn and I talked about that quite a bit, and I said the Lost is really up my alley in terms of a show, but I didn't watch it because I just felt like they didn't know where they were going from early on. It just didn't have that sense of, it had so much mystery, but so little drive toward the solution of the mystery for me.
I think it was one of the first series, wasn't it, that I can remember that people talked about during the week. And it was like, did you see the last episode? I can't remember anything really before that that was so different to what we'd been watching before.
Twin Peaks.
But I think the first season, everyone was kind of on it, and then as it went on, you were like, but I'm not getting any answers. And do I stick with it until I get those answers? It's almost too much, like you said, like too mysterious. There was nothing, I felt like I was not getting nothing out of it other than more questions. And so many people were not satisfied with the ending, you know.
No, I think I ducked out of it.
Ending,
it was terrible. I mean, I ducked out of it, I think, halfway through season 3. I think at that point, I just thought they clearly have no idea where we're going. They are actually lost. So
it was really well named.
Until they found out where they're going, I'm bailing out of this journey. And he, to be fair, he did the same. There was another show that he did, Abrams, which I really like, called Fringe. And the first,
I loved that. The
first few episodes of that, the first season of that, I thought was fantastic. And then he seemed to drift into this mirror dimension, this mirror universe. And again, to me, it just lost it there. If he kept it as the X-Files, where it was just a different mystery every week, it would have kept it really, really good, you know. But
yeah, I think it's an interesting example of how studios start seeing, right, well, we've got potential here for more, you know, more series. Excuse me, more series, more money, that kind of thing. So approach the writer and say, right, we need you to add another season or string it out for another 2 or 3 or something.
On that, because I know that I think the Americans in general do that better than we do in the UK. Do you think you as a team benefit from having one of you here in the UK and one of you in America? Do you feel like you've got more bases covered in terms of getting the show, getting it made?
I don't think so with Tomorrow's Flight, because it is an American show. It's set. I mean, it couldn't be filmed over here. It couldn't be made. I don't think it could be successfully adapted to be set in the UK.
But I think that there's an advantage in having an American and a British in the writing team, regardless of location.
Yeah.
You know, I think we bring different things to the table, and we can do a little bit more, because one, you know, we make mistakes with the other culture, with the other's culture, you know, and we sort of, you know, explain things, because Martyn had some stuff in the previous, you know, just logistical things that any Brit would know, or any American would know, that the other one's made a small mistake on, just because you don't live in that culture.
Yes. So, and I know the other thing you're branching out with Tomorrow's Flight, which brings in another interesting angle, which I think is one that we as scriptwriters don't often consider, which is the audio kind of presentation. So we always tend to think of, if I'm writing a script, it'll be for television or for film, but we don't think of radio or audio drama. You've got studios like Big Finish and things like that who are doing quite a lot with reinvigorating old, mainly British television series and things like that. So once again, I asked you to, at the risk of perhaps asking you to repeat yourselves, have you found converting the story once again into a different medium? Because obviously audio is going to be so much more different to both television, film and novel, because there's so much more that you can't really
in terms of the mechanics of it, it's essentially just read from the novel. It's not read from the screenplay, because an audio book, which is, I think, is what you're asking, because that's what we're in the early stages of producing now. And Caroline Carrigan's doing the narration and the producing of it.
And she's on the call. She's on the call right now, right?
Yeah, Caroline's on.
Hi, Caroline.
And we'll bring Caroline in to add to it. But Caroline is fantastic at doing this.
Oh, thank you.
The chapters that we've had from her and things like that. And so for an audio book, it's just read straight from the novel, because it's not a play. It's not. It's, you know, we're not. This isn't a radio play or anything like that. This is an audio book. It is literally what it's in.
But we can make some you know, adjustments, so it doesn't have to match necessarily word for word. If there's a clumsy bit or something like that, we can fix that for the audio version. You know, we can give notes.
I listen to audiobooks a lot, and you get quite a range of different styles, I guess, and formats, because some of them have sound effects, some of them have multiple narrators, some of them have just one, and they do the voices of everybody. So yeah, it must still fit with the voice of your work. So how did you always know that you wanted Caroline to read it for you?
It kind of dawned on us, I think. Martyn had a really great audiobook reader for his other books, and we really liked him. But when Caroline did the table read, we really liked her performance in that, and we decided that the audiobook should probably be read by a woman and probably by an American. It wasn't an absolute requirement, but that was just our first choice. we wanted to be we wanted to stand out from the other works in the genre, which tend to be sort of male in focus. And we have female characters who have essentially the largest roles in the novel, as it turns out. And so we kind of wanted to emphasize that in the audiobook. And the question for Caroline would be how she goes about doing the reading, I think, because it's not just, you know, reading the book. There's a performance element to it as well.
Yeah, you've got to perform the book rather than just, it's not the same as
And
reading.
you must have to read the book multiple times as well, Caroline.
I have read it a couple of times. I'm reading it as I'm reading it as I go along. It's a fairly easy book to read. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I love doing the characters. I think I had a bit of advantage because we did the reading of the pilot first. So I got to hear other people read the characters, you know, which was really nice. I mean, I think that's a bit of an advantage for me in that I got to hear sort of not that I'm cribbing from them or anything, but I got to hear sort of the interactions of the characters, and, you know, and we discussed a lot in the rehearsal, sort of the motivations of the characters and the directions that the characters were taking. And so I feel like I had a bit of an advantage that maybe some other readers don't have just reading a book. But it's fun. I go in the closet at night and read it to myself, kind of. Well, it's true, you know, I'm in another place. I'm in a slightly bigger closet at the moment, which is really nice. But the big drawback has been that it's been in the high 90s and hundreds in Los Angeles. So going into the closet really is a late night endeavor because you can't have fans or air conditioners or anything running. So
oh God, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, I think we'd pass out with that kind of heat over here, and us Brits can't deal with it.
Well, we're not happy with it here either.
No, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's we're through the worst of it now.
Yeah,
we have a warm week coming up, I think, but this week's beautiful.
Yeah.
yeah.
So moving.
I mean, I wouldn't say no to a trip over there just to try it out, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool at the beach. Generally, it's rare that it's super hot at the beach.
Because also then you've got the sea to have a dip in, haven't you?
In the winter.
That also brings me on to a question. So you've both met, right?
Yes, I went over to Los Angeles 2 years ago.
Was that like pretty awesome? Because I know that at the moment we're all dealing with each other online, aren't we? And we haven't kind of ventured to the meeting in real life yet, which I think will come soon, hopefully. But did you feel like a connection, if you know what I mean? Did you feel like you've known each other for all that time, and you know, was it easy
for me? It didn't feel much different.
Yeah.
The conversations, because we were at the time we did a lot of Zoom. We mostly talk on Skype on our phones, just like a phone call, as opposed to a video. So you were doing
Skype before the world took over Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're complete amateurs at it still. We, for the life of us, can't get it right. We can't figure out how it works. It doesn't work almost every call, and so we have these multiple calls, and then finally it magically works.
Yeah, we have no idea what happens. It seems as though it always works on the third attempt, and we have no idea why. So that's just what we do. But no, I mean, in fact, it was 2 years ago this week that I was over.
Was it?
In Los Angeles. And of course I was like a kid in a sweet shop when I got over there, because I've seen LA on films and TVs, you know, growing up and things. So of course I was just wandering around, you know, in awe. And poor Steve, you know, I bullied him into taking me to see the Hollywood sign and all of this kind of thing.
It's got to be done, yeah.
I got a photograph of it, but it's, you know, he took me to see the Pacific Coast Highway and the canyons and all of this. And so, you know, it was to go over and work on the harvesting and things. And I think we probably did maybe half a day's, probably not even half a day's work. And the rest of it was just sightseeing. And then I had a couple of days to myself where I did the touristy stuff and went to the Getty and the tar pits and all of this kind of stuff. I didn't get to the observatory though. I'm hoping to get over next April. That's hopefully when I'm going back over.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think if the COVID hadn't have happened, do you think you would have met in the meantime?
Yes, the plan was for me to go over this year. So I would have probably been over there now if COVID had been, you know, done.
We were going to.
I was in the travel agent booking the flight back in May to go over, but COVID just exploded again, and America won't let Europeans in at the moment. So
no,
yeah, we're not clean enough.
Ring the handbell.
Yeah.
But so you can come here though.
Yes, they're always welcome here, but the former colonies at the moment, they're not letting us in. I'm not sure.
And I'd love to come over, but I'm a little scared to travel still. And we talked about this a little at the beginning, but when we do this proof of concept, it's an American story, but we don't know. But it would. We have a lot of options, but it could possibly be shot in England.
So with you both writing,
sorry, it's an historical piece, so it might be easier to find locations over there.
Yeah,
we had an interesting conversation with the producer over there, who's making a short herself, and we
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
You know, so we'll have to look at cost and you know, Los Angeles doesn't look like the 19th century East Coast. I think Britain does a better job of that than probably even the East Coast does.
Would that be north or south, Martyn?
That would be south, I think. So yeah, we'll call in for a couple of
You'd have to venture down. Yeah. Stop off on the M5. Stop off down our way.
Yeah, we will. We'll pop in. Don't worry if it goes ahead. But yeah, it's essentially it's set in a creepy old graveyard, most of it. And
we've got loads of those, haven't we?
Yeah.
Certainly find you a few of those. No problem.
Yeah.
It just seems like that would be an easier location over there than here. I mean, we do have some, but I don't know. You want those big old headstones and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
A foggy morning. That's what you want.
Yeah.
So with you both writing novels and screenplays, what would you rather write?
Oh, that's a good question, Phil. Screenplays are easier, I think. But novels are more satisfying. That's me personally. I don't know. Steve and I haven't discussed that.
Well, and I've said it before, but the thing that's satisfying about the book is that you end up with a product at the end, and with the screenplay, you end up with a plan. And both are, but you know, architects are perfectly happy to draw up plans. You know, that satisfies them. So it doesn't mean that one's necessarily better than the other, but they are different. And you just have to realize that if you're not, you know, if you're happy writing a plan and that being the end, that's great. But if you want to bring it to fruition, you're only halfway there. You've either got to get somebody to buy it, or you've got to take the next step and implement it yourself. Yeah. I mean, we're learning that you have to do a lot of work with the book as well. It is a product, but it has to be marketed, you know, so, but that happens with the screenplay as well. So that's yet another step beyond the writing, whichever way you go.
Would you say that a novel feels more creatively complete to your vision?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's a really nice way to put it.
Yeah, it's tangible when you've got that novel in your hand. You know, when we ordered the promotional copies and they landed, you've got this box full of these books, you know, and it's a tangible product. It's there. A screenplay, yes, you can print it out, but it's, you know, 60
the
pages.
screenplay, one of the, you know, I mean, you, even with the book, you sort of think about what actors would be playing the characters, but that's a real benefit of the screenplay, is that you really are considering actors who would be right for your, and sometimes I'm sure that you, as writers, do this as well, but you actually have somebody in mind when you're writing a character, a specific actor, and you actually find that you start writing to the actor a little bit with the character. And that's fun in its own, you know, and you know that chances are you won't get that person, even if it gets made, you're not likely to get that person, but it's still fun to write in that direction. And it just, you can see that person and they become the character for you, and it helps you in your writing process.
Yeah, I think I've said this in all of our writing rooms that we have, that personally I always start with that person, and before I even write a treatment or a script, I have somebody's face in mind, because I find it really helps with the character development, and kind of, like you said, writing to that person, because it becomes more real, doesn't it? It's real in a way.
Yeah. I think in Tomorrow's Flight, one example of that in Tomorrow's Flight would be Susan, or Marcus being Terry Crews. You know, we just always saw Marcus as being, well, there was two actors we sort of kicked around, which was Terry Crews and Morris Chestnut. And it was, I always flipped, Steve's very sort of thinks of him purely as Terry Crews. I sometimes think of him as Morris Chestnut. But so you get that sort of thing, and you do start to write in, when you're writing the role, like the spec script that I'm writing at the moment, which is based on episodes, as I'm writing the words, I can hear the actor's voice saying them. And I think that's very helpful.
And for me, it was a bit of a hybrid. There was a radio show host whose voice I heard when I was writing Marcus, who isn't an actor, so he wouldn't be right for the role, but he's a sports radio guy, and that voice I kind of used his voice and Terry Crews's sort of presence in my mind.
What a presence! Yes. So,
Wow.
And I wrote a cover story on Terry Crews for a magazine a few years ago, and so I thought, you know, maybe there's some ability to get it to him. So I reached out to his PR people, and they've referred me to his manager and agent, which is always sort of the kiss of death. But I'm going to try that in the upcoming week or two. We got involved with Pipeline, and they suggested that we go that route and see if we could get some interest that way.
I think it's a massive, it's a huge addition to the complete package, isn't it? To have a talent attached, because it's just that kind of a little bit more of a seal of approval for the networks.
Yeah, it's less of a risk for them.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Well, I think it drives them to a more favorable reading.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't even mean that person would necessarily be part of the project. It's just that you've got somebody who is willing to say, yeah, I like this.
Yeah, put their name to it. So
without them even reading it to start off with, you know, because, you know, we know the stories of the agents having piles and piles and piles of scripts. And I suppose if one lands there and says so-and-so's read it and likes it and has sent a letter of intent, then they perhaps might put it to the top of the list.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things, back to the idea of intellectual property and having that behind it, the character of Marcus is really barely in the pilot. And so if we sent the pilot to them, they'd say, well, why would Terry Crews be interested in that? So we'll need to provide the book to show that he's really a major character. You know, and the whole story's outlined in the book. You know, if we get to that stage.
Yeah,
if they would make that request.
I'm really keen on Brendan Fraser playing Bruce.
Excellent.
Wow.
Really keen on Brendan Fraser playing Bruce.
I haven't seen him in much for a while.
He's, well, funnily enough, just as we got towards the end of the book, and I said to Steve, "Oh, you know, we're tantalisingly close now." He signed on to do a Martin Scorsese film, so you know, timing as always.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be big, I think, over the next couple of years.
He's ready to explode again.
Yeah, I can see him like John Travolta a few years ago with Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
Pushed him.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's ready just to make it big again, and which is why we're keen to get something to him and see if he likes it or not.
Absolutely. Are there any particular challenges that you faced in your writing?
The same as every writer that's joined us on this Zoom call. Moments of despair and thinking, what the hell am I doing? And am I really good enough? And this is crap and I should give it up and go and sell washing machines, and is a bad example. Yeah. And then euphoria because you read something back and you think, my God, did I actually read that? Am I that clever? And I'm not, this isn't me sounding, this is something we've all experienced as writers. I know we have. I wrote a ghost book a few years ago called Thurstonfield Halt, and when I read that back sometimes I think, did I actually write that?
Yeah, that's quite good.
At the time I was writing it, I was thinking, why are you doing this? You're not good, you're never gonna.
Yeah.
But you get that in every career. I don't care who you are, you have moments in every career that you think,
no doubt.
Yeah. So and then you finish a project and you take a big sigh of relief, and then it's, well, what the hell do I do next? I can't think of a new idea. Can't think of something. And then something will hit you from out of the blue. And I emailed Steve with an idea that I had at some point during the night a couple of weeks ago or a few days ago, I can't remember which. But with me, I'll have ideas and then I'll instantly forget them. And if that's the case, then they're not worth pursuing. But this idea has really stuck with me.
Oh yeah,
and
those are, they're good ones when
so then there's something there because it's it's doing this now.
Yeah.
So poor Steve, I emailed him, and we've got this big hill to climb still with the book and the script and Paul and the harvesting and everything else that we've poured 5 years into, and I'm like, my God, I've got a brilliant idea for something. And Steve is so good at calming me down and saying, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll put it on the back burner. And I'm like, he hates it, but never mind.
That's it, rubbish.
And I'm the excitable one.
I don't know about other writers, but I kind of need like a gap of about, oh gosh, I'd say at least 6, if not 8 hours. If I've got an appointment in 2 hours, I can't sit down and write. I need to have a complete clean slate for the next several days, and I don't write every day. At this phase, we work on their projects every day, and there's a lot of emailing, and those are detailed, and that there's I'd say I write one day and then I work on the business of the writing the next day, and that I can do in 2 hours. If I have 2 hours, I can write 6 emails that push the process along. So it's not, so I don't feel like I'm doing nothing, although that's not very satisfying. But to get to that point, it sounds like you guys really relate to that you need big blocks of time as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to find a block of time. I think everyone's got so many other things going on, haven't they? But the dream would be to have a block of time every single day, and I think that would be awesome. But I was going to ask you actually about when you have new ideas, and what does the future look like for your partnership? Are you thinking about working on more stuff together, or are you looking for other people what to collaborate with? What's your kind of plan?
We were asked a couple of weeks ago if we were superheroes, who would be Batman and who would be Robin? And we decided that we were supervillains instead, called Hapless and Hopeless. And then we were described as having an open relationship because we both work on our individual stuff, and Steve has another writing partner as well. who he's done a couple of comedies with, that's done really well in a couple of competitions. And I think without COVID, probably would have progressed and may still progress. Fingers crossed it will. But we have projects ahead of us. We have a few things that we're kicking around. I don't see an end to what we're doing or how we work. It seems to work. We seem to come up with good ideas. We seem to work well together. I think we produce good products. So, yeah, I mean, it would be nice now to start making some bloody money out of all of the good sweat and tears, of course.
Hard work, yes.
That would be a nice thing to happen.
Yeah.
Because there isn't much money in books. You know, you write this novel, and I think we covered this on the last meeting, but you know, you write this novel, you send it out into the world, and even if it goes traditionally published, and even if it's through a literary agent, even, it doesn't stop there. You've got, the publishers do very little of the work for you, and so that's as Steve said, that's what we're putting so much of our effort into now. And we're constantly writing emails saying, right, we can tick this off the list. The press release has gone out. Now we're just waiting for the Kirkus review to come in. But now we've managed to get it listed on Ingram. So now it's available at Barnes and Noble. So I'm going to go to Waterstones. Steve's going to go to Book Soup and Ella. So that we're constantly going backwards and forwards all the time. Bang, 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 you know, and doing this. And so, yeah, I think at the moment, everything is, we've got a good rhythm. And I think there's no need to upset that or do anything different, quite frankly, from this end, from this side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, and we've got enough work lined up to take us through the end of next year.
That's awesome. You obviously make a really good team.
With our projects, and you know, and integrating our solo projects into that, you know. We're sort of like a band where we do solo projects, I guess, you know, so, you know, kind of the Fleetwood Mac model where they went off and made their solo records, which I use because I actually I did a Fleetwood Mac book several years ago. Yeah. With the producer of the Rumors album.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a for hire project. That was a memoir. His memoir was a memoir of the year in the studio of making Rumors, and the book's called Making Rumors. Which, by the way, I had to fight tooth and nail to get. Everybody wanted to call it Starting Rumors, and I kept saying, well, it's a really clever title, but it's not. It's a title for a different book. You know, because I mean, everybody wanted to. And by everybody, I mean managers, agents, producer, publishers, all wanted to talk about how salacious the book was. And it's just really not. It's about interacting and making the music as opposed to all the drugs and, well, the drugs and the alcohol are all there. But this was before things went really off the rails. That was their first year, you know, because they have a really interesting history, not to get too far off on a tangent, but they had recorded their previous album as Fleetwood Mac, called Fleetwood Mac. That first album didn't sell well, and they started making Rumors. And only during the recording of Rumors, well, the other album was out in the marketplace for a year or so, did one of the singles from the previous album start to gain traction. So they weren't a famous band when they started making Rumors. I mean, they were, you know, well known in Britain, but this incarnation of Fleetwood Mac hadn't had any great success, and so they were becoming famous as they were making Rumors, which was interesting. So all those big hits from the previous album were unknown, especially over here, during the recording of that year. And then, you know, Rumors, of course, took them to the top.
Yeah, that's the one that punched the hole through for them.
Yeah.
But
my dad used to listen to that album in the car all the time.
Oh yeah.
What's the future hold for you both? Where would you want to be? I don't know, 12 months, 24 months, 3-4 years. What would be your future goals?
How realistic do you want us to be?
Oh, dream big, like massive.
Oh, hey, Beverly Hills.
Come on, yeah.
Beverly Hills, darling, with a chauffeur, and the red carpet. No,
lining up our skill set and our dreams, I would say that what we're really good at is implementing an idea to the point where we can sell it and hand it over to somebody who's got money. You know, I don't think Martyn and I are line producers or desire to be. You know, that's tough work, and it's a real special skill set, often overlooked.
Mhm.
And so we see ourselves as creative producers more than back end.
The fantasy would be, you know, to sell tomorrow's flight and be there while it's being made and all of this kind of thing. But as Steve said, we would probably settle for, you know, selling it. I mean, I personally really love to write all of the episodes because I feel so personal to it, and I think Steve feels the same to a certain degree. But 10 or 15 years ago, I probably would have fought to, you know, be very much in it and of it and all the rest of it. But probably not so now, I don't think.
Yeah, well, that tends not to go very well for the writer.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
You know, you know, even, you know, we've talked about this before, but even, you know, a guy like Frank Darabont ends up getting kicked to the curb.
Yeah.
Walking Dead. So
talking about you know, dream actors and things, we've spoke about directors and producers, and I mean Frank Darabont is our dream director for tomorrow's flight because of what he did with the first season of The Walking Dead, what he did with Shawshank, things like that. You know, he's the tone that he brings to it. That first season of The Walking Dead, you could smell the sweat.
Yeah.
You know, it was dirty, it was gritty, it wasn't, you were there, you know, and
you could feel it, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You could literally feel it.
Yeah, you were pushing the mosquitoes away, and you could smell the clothes, you could smell that they hadn't washed. And
the show takes a real turn after he leaves, and I fell out of it just by tone shift.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say, I mean, I know people watched 10 seasons of it and loved it, but it became less my taste. After that.
Well, point. There was definitely a very obvious point where I think a lot of people fell away from it. We watched it religiously, and I can't even remember where we are now. We're not up to date at all. We haven't been excited to watch the next season like you were before, like season 2. Can you remember, like, just thinking, hurry up, get on my telly and get in my eyes because I need to watch it. But it hasn't been like that for a couple of seasons.
Well, the problem was they gave it to a showrunner called Scott M. Gimble or Kimball or something. And he took it in a very different direction. And then, so really what you had is, it was called The Walking Dead, but what it should have been is just a new villain every season, but rinse, wash and repeat, because that's essentially what it became. And so I switched at that point to Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Because that started the zombie apocalypse actually at the very start of it. So you saw it unfold in Los Angeles. And I really enjoyed that. And it focused on the Clark family. And it was brilliant, but then they gave that to him as well, and then that took a similar sort of turn. So I think it was season 4 that I eventually gave up on The Walking Dead, and it was the end of season 3 when I gave up on Fear the Walking Dead. And then I understand that Rick is no longer in The Walking Dead because they're making a movie or something with him.
With him in it.
Yeah, they're making a Rick Grimes movie, as far as I understand it.
Right, what to follow on his story?
I have no idea, Amy.
Because I need to know what happened. I thought you had a little nugget.
Google is your friend.
It's funny because I've read the comic books. As I say, massive fan of the comic books, and Robert Kirkman, the chap who wrote them. It's interesting seeing how there's elements from the comics in the series, and he kind of did his biggest kind of twist in it all was wrapping the comic books up without telling anyone. So even down to the fact that you have like what they call previews, where the trade press previews upcoming comic issues for for a couple of months or so, and they had the preview covers and the story outline and things like that for about 2 or 3 months, and then just finished it completely on a random number and things like that. So it was like the comic always got well known for killing people off without you really expecting them to die in kind of like really weird and bizarre ways, you know, completely matter of fact rather than, you know, some great big heroic death. And he did exactly the same thing with the comic. You're like, wow, okay, crikey. So you kind of
and I think you can do that with a comic. I think it's a lot harder to do it with a TV show. And when they killed Shane off, Shane, you know, was the opposite to Rick. He was the antagonist to Rick's protagonist. And it just, for me, it just killed that whole dynamic. That dynamic, the three of them, was just fantastic, because Rick was the conscience. He was the guy that kept the humanity of the group in check. Shane was the guy that would do what it took for them to survive. And not all of us could be a Shane. You know, we not all of us are that ruthless. And when they took him out of the equation, it was like, okay, so what happens now? And then everywhere that Rick turned up, you just knew it was going to end up in a shit show. He turned up at Alexandria, which has survived X amount of years in this zombie apocalypse with barely a scratch. And with half a season, you know, he was only in 4 shows, and the zombies were in breaching the breaching wall. So, yeah. But anyway, we should not bash other people's shows, because.
Are there any particular shows that you would want to write or wish you had written?
I've written a spec for Hacks. And I don't know if you guys haven't got that over there yet, have you?
Yeah, I heard a lot about it. So
I heard about it, but I don't think we've got it.
No.
One of the things about it that I like and that made it doable for writing a spec is that it doesn't have a strong, like, 10 episode arc the way most shows do these days. It's 10 episodes, but they're kind of standalones. So you don't have to worry about, you know, the plot moving on beyond your spec or fitting in, or, you know, because did you see Dead to Me?
Yes.
And that's got a very strong season arc, you know, each season's going somewhere. So how would you write a spec for season 3 when you don't know what season 3 is? And
it's the same, it's with the White Lotus that's been on here. Apparently there is a season 2 coming, but I don't know how that will work.
What you could do with the White Lotus, if you were really inclined, is write a spec pilot for season 3 and just make it up yourself. You know, and maybe use the same actors.
I imagine that they're going to bring new people to the island. That's how I imagine that season 2 will.
Or I think they're going to do a kind of a Ryan Murphy with American Horror Story, where everybody will be a different character, but some of the actors will come back and play just different roles.
Like The Haunting of Hill House. They used the same actors there, didn't they, for the other one, which I can't remember what it's called.
I like that. I think that's a great model to kind of have these acting troupes that work with producers over and over again. I like that too. I've got one more question. I don't know whether anyone else has a question or whether anyone wants to put anything in the chat to ask, but I'll ask mine first. And that is, and I like to ask this to everyone on the series, is what can we as a writing community do for you? How can we help you kind of get to where you want to be?
I think it's what we can all do for each other, which is, you know, you sort of hear the saying, it's the network of the network of the network, and reading people's scripts and giving feedback and just being there for someone if they want to mourn and whinge about what a bloody awful thing it is sometimes to do what we do. So my response to that is what we can all do for each other, and I think just supporting each other and helping each other. It would be fantastic for all of us, and we probably all dream of this coming across this one person that can just open the doors wide open They don't exist, I don't think. That would be fantastic, of course, and we'd all agree that that would be fantastic, but it's an unreasonable expectation. But I think if we can all just give each other those little steps up and do what we can.
Amplification is always good. You know, when through Twitter or other mediums, you know, there's a lot of, you know, every once in a while a manager or something will say, you know, what writers should I be taking a look at? I think everybody can, you know, choose the writers that they've read. I think it's important not just to promote people who you've interacted with nicely, but, you know, you really should promote projects that you're familiar with.
Mm.
I think that's more valuable than, you know, just dropping a name of somebody who's you've had nice interactions with.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and put up with all the tweets that we're putting out for tomorrow's flight. That's and not telling us to bugger off. That's really good, because we've said to each other, by God, they must be getting sick of seeing them by now, but it's all part of it.
I think
you
either see them all or you don't
we
see
get
any.
stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Stephen and Martyn at all? Anyone want to ask anything? I know we've had a few in the chat, but I think you two have been addressing those as they've come along by the looks of it. But please, by all means, do feel free to unmute yourselves if you're not already off mute, and ask away if there's anything you want to ask.
This is Cynthia. I wanted to ask, as which one of you, or if both of you, envision while you're writing a movie or a series or a television program, because I know for myself, I seem to write as if it is going to be a movie. And so my perspective, when you're talking about point of view, I'm always kind of the omni view when I write. And so that adds to that. So I was just kind of wondering if as you're writing, whether it's a novel or how you envision it. Are you really embedded in the words, and that's the thing that motivates you?
I understand that question, so I'll address it, because that's an important question for me. When I write screenplays, I am a camera. I think like a camera. You know, it's like, what can I see? Because I can't, you know, occasionally I'll put in some exposition that for the reader that can't be communicated. You know, like I've got a line in the thing I was working on last night that says, she leaves the room heading to the nurse station. Well, there's no way to show that she's going to the nurse station. You know, the camera can't capture that. So I'm aware of that with that line, but I thought, well, it's important for the reader to know that, so I'm going to leave that in. It's implied, but you know, that's a bit of writing that goes beyond the camera. So when I write for screen or TV, I try to keep myself to what the camera can communicate. When I'm writing fiction, I go into people's heads, and there's a lot more thoughts, and it's a lot more internal. So I try to, so I'm inside the person then, instead of on the outside for the most part.
And for me, when I'm writing a novel, I'm sat in the audience watching the screen. So it's cinematic. I write, you know, the novels that I've written solo, or I've written the ghost stories I wrote for my brother because it was based on his story. He's a spiritualist medium, so he came to me with a few things that have happened, and we put them into a story. I write them as if they're on screen, as if you're watching them, and I do that to a certain degree with the screenplay as well. So I'll send the first draft to Steve, and Steve will come back and say, looks good, but the camera can't see that, so we need to do it this way. And so that's
excellent.
That's how we do it. Yeah.
Yeah, you try to find clever ways to get that, to get the interior, the character's interior into a visual format through words.
It's really hard, isn't it, what we do?
Yes, you know, when you put it that way, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, because everybody has a different way of doing it, and everybody has different ideas of how it should be done.
But
And they're all
you know,
separate people.
you read somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and they'll write a scene where there's all sorts of action going on in a car, or you know, people wandering around, you know, a large venue, and you're like, and how in the world are you going to shoot that?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I
and
love
so
that. That's excellent. Yeah, writing.
That's a
view it from
great
the camera.
question, Cynthia.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, excellent question, Cynthia.
Well, it is interesting because the fact that we can see it in our minds, it's possible to see.
Mm.
And then, but then we have the technical aspect of the camera, which is a
Yeah.
physical thing that's supposed to manifest what we're seeing. But the thing is that when we're writing it, we're seeing it in our heads.
Yeah.
So it's an
Yeah.
interesting, how do you, that translation, and it's also interesting with the people who read it, because I always get a point of view ding. You know, what's that? But then other people will breeze right through it and not even notice that I might have a point of view problem, and that because that won't be the thing. They're more interested in whatever
most
the action
readers
is.
won't pick up on that. Yeah. You know, you can really disguise that if you're clever. You know, it's kind of, you can kind of hide that, which isn't always the best thing. But I read one of Janet Swainston's scripts recently. I don't know if she's done a table read. I don't think she's done a table read of it, but it was good. And she's planning to produce it herself, which is a whole other animal. So now if you're going to do, you know, now you're setting yourself up with a scene that you've got to do. You know, if you're going to sell your project, then it's somebody else's worry, but she wants to produce this, and she has a long sequence in a swamp. And I'm like, I produced a film where there was exteriors like that. I'm like, you know, you can only put your actors in water for so long before they want to kill you.
And of course, this in years to come, this will all change, because as they're doing now with movies, they're not using cameras. The worlds are built within the software. You know, you only have to look at the newest films coming out, and some of the people in the background are not actors, the CGI, and they're becoming indistinguishable. And so maybe in 10 or 20 years' time, you won't have to think like a camera, because maybe there won't be a camera, and it will change again.
Oh, that's blown my mind.
Scripted by AI.
Little scary.
Yeah.
Very scary.
Like that.
Very scary, because at some point we're not going to need actors. We're going to need voice actors, because they'll just be able to build the actor that they want within the program.
Yeah. Oh, I hope that's a long time away. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Might be closer than you think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Positive thoughts. Any other questions from anyone at all?
I think we're good.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for giving us your time.